Hope you're all doing well. We're up to Chaf Tes Amud Aleph 29a1, first column, second paragraph. Amar Rav Yaakov. Okay, so let's before we jump into the words, we had a Mishnah. Our Mishnah told us that chametz is aser before Pesach, meaning from Erev Pesach, from the midday and on, a little past midday and on, and we have chametz is aser on Pesach, and chametz is aser after Pesach. And then the Mishnah distinguished between the chametz of a Jew and a non-Jew, where it said that chametz of a Jew is aser b'hana, it's forbidden in benefit after Pesach, whereas chametz of a non-Jew is permitted in benefit after Pesach. And then the Gemara quoted a brisa quoting three different opinions: Rav Yehuda, Rav Shimon, and Rav Yossi Haglili. Okay, and none of them seem to match up with our Mishnah, because Rav Yehuda said that chametz is aser before, during, and after Pesach, but he didn't distinguish between Jew and non-Jew. So presumably Rav Yehuda cannot be the author of our Mishnah, because he does not distinguish between Jew and non-Jew. Then we had Rav Shimon, who said chametz is only aser on Pesach, not aser before, not aser after. Yet our Mishnah said chametz is aser after. And it can't be Rav Yossi Haglili, because Rav Yossi Haglili said that chametz even during Pesach is mutter b'hana. You're allowed to benefit from it, you just can't eat it. So the Gemara is trying to figure out who is the author of our Mishnah. The Gemara is going to give two answers. Amar Rav Yaakov, Amar Rav Yehuda. Really, it's Rav Yehuda. Okay, and again, Rav Yehuda was the one who said that chametz is aser before Pesach, during Pesach, and after Pesach. So what was the issue? The issue was that Rabbi Yehuda did not seem to distinguish between Jew and non-Jew. The Gemara is going to say he actually does make that distinction. He derives the prohibition of eating from the prohibition of being seen. When it comes to seeing, there's a prohibition when it comes to chametz of bal yirav, not seeing. And when it comes to the prohibition of seeing, the Torah says lo yira lecha, it should not be seen to you. And what Chazal learned from there is that you cannot see your own chametz, but you could see a non-Jew's chametz, you could see chametz that belongs to hektish, meaning chametz that lets you designated some bread to the base of Mikdash, then that chametz you're allowed to see. There's no prohibition there. Practically speaking, what that means, if a non-Jew comes to your house and decides to sit down and have their own meal, totally fine. They can be eating bread. That's not your problem. Okay, but the point is that he learns from there to when it comes to eating, the prohibition of consumption, also the prohibition of consumption is only for a Jew and not for a non-Jew, nor for that of Most High. Meaning, there's technically no prohibition against eating the chametz of a non-Jew, or the chametz of hektish, okay? And so the Gemara continues, and really when the Mishnah taught this halacha, it should have said afilu b'achila nami shri. It should have said the chametz of a non-Jew is even permitted for eating. All it said in our Mishnah was the chametz of a non-Jew is permitted in benefit. It should have said that the chametz of a non-Jew is permitted to eat. But since the Mishnah wanted to emphasize that a Jew's chametz is not only prohibited in eating, it's also prohibited in having benefit, it said when a non-Jew is allowed, you're allowed to have benefit. But don't think that when it comes to non-Jew, you're only allowed to benefit. Really, you're even allowed to eat the chametz of a non-Jew. Okay, Tananami Denachri Mutter Bana. Sorry, the ID. Second, I'm sorry. And really, it should have also taught that the chametz of a non-Jew is allowed not only after Pesach, but even during Pesach. But since it taught the prohibition of chametz of a Jew after its time, it also taught about the non-Jews chametz after its time. But technically, the chametz of a non-Jew is permitted during the time. So let's just we said a lot of words. Let's try to make sense of it all. What that means is as follows: technically, what we're learning now in Rabbi Yehuda is he does make a distinction between a Jew's chametz and a non-Jew's chametz, in as much as everyone agrees that bal yira, the prohibition against seeing chametz, is limited to a Jew's chametz and it is not applied to a non-Jew's chametz. Rav Yaakov is telling us that Rabbi Yehuda, the Tana, he holds that chametz of a non-Jew and chametz of hektish that belongs to the base of Mikdash is permitted to eat and to have benefit from both during and after Pesach. Now, practically speaking, as Tosfos points out, you can't really have a situation where you're going to be eating the chametz of a non-Jew and it being permitted, because as soon as you take it and put it in your mouth, it becomes yours. Whether he gave it to you, stole it from him, it becomes yours, and therefore, technically, it's not going to be relevant. But the point is that when it comes to our Mishnah, which said that after Pesach, the chametz of a non-Jew is permitted to be eaten, that follows Rabbi Yehuda's thinking, because according to Rabbi Yaakov, Rabbi Yehuda says, in as much as, again, bal yira, the prohibition against seeing chametz is limited to Jews, so to eating chametz is limited to Jews, and non-Jews chametz you're allowed to eat after Pesach. And therefore the Mishnah, according to Rabbi Yaakov, fits nicely with Rabbi Yehuda. However, we're going to have another possibility. Rav Amar L'Olam Rav Shimon. Really, the author of Mishnah is Rav Shimon. Now again, Rav Shimon was the one who said that chametz is only aser on Pesach. There's no prohibition Erev Pesach, there's no prohibition after Pesach. So we asked, wait a second, according to Rav Shimon, it's only aser on Pesach. So yet our Mishnah says that chametz of a Jew is aser after Pesach. Rav Shimon can ask a kanis. And Rav Shimon says there's a knas. What's the knas? A knas means it's a penalty. Since the owner, by owning the chametz, was in violation of you shall not see it, it shall not be found in your possession, two prohibitions against having chametz in your possession, he was in violation of those things. Therefore, they gave him, there's a knas, there's a penalty that after Pesach you also cannot eat or benefit from the chametz that you kept. So now the Gemara says, Bishlam Rava. The Mishnah reads very nicely according to this second view, the view of Rava. Because the Mishnah says a Jew's chametz after Pesach cannot be eaten. Why? Because the verse lo yira, it shall not be seen. Now, he's saying, this is the view of Rav Shimon. Rav Shimon saying that you can't have it, since you were in violation of the prohibition of you cannot see your chametz over Pesach, meaning you cannot own your chametz over Pesach. Therefore, our sages instituted a knas, a penalty, and therefore prohibited the chametz after Pesach. El Rav Acha bar Yaakov, who says that the reason the chametz is asur after Pesach, a Jew's chametz is asur after Pesach, is because there's a pasuk which says you cannot eat that chametz. The Mishnah should have said the reason forbidden because the pasuk says no chametz shall be eaten. It's a full-fledged prohibition. It says you cannot eat this chametz after Pesach, according to Rabbi Yehuda. Why does the Mishnah say lo yira lecha? It's because you're in violation of possessing it. What does that have to do with anything? So Misavar Sasifikai, the Gemara answers. Who says you think this pasuk is addressing the end, the last clause of the Mishnah? Areshakai is going on the beginning of the Mishnah. This is the way to read the Mishnah. Chametz shall nachrish avar Pesach mutar bana. It's going on the earlier clause which said that the chametz of a non-Jew, which was in existence over Pesach, you're allowed to benefit after Pesach. Why? Because the Torah says, "Leaven shall not be seen to you." You're not allowed to see your own chametz. You're allowed to see, you're allowed to own that chametz of a non-Jew and that of hektish. And we learned, as we saw earlier, that the prohibition of consumption is learned from the prohibition of against possession, of having it seen. And therefore, the way to read the Mishnah, it's not problematic according to Yehuda either. The way to read the Mishnah is as follows. The Mishnah says you're allowed to have chametz of a non-Jew after Pesach. Why? Because the source of eating chametz after Pesach, the source of the prohibition of against chametz is learned from lo yira lecha. And just like there, by lo yira lecha, it's limited to Jews and not non-Jews and not hektish. So too, when it comes to after Pesach, it's limited to Jews and non-Jews it's limited to Jews and not non-Jews and hektish. And therefore, the chametz of a non-Jew is permitted after Pesach, and that's what the pasuk was going on. Okay, Bazlu Tamayu, and these opinions are consistent with the reasoning elsewhere. Itmar was taught elsewhere. Let's say a person eats chametz belonging to a non-Jew after Pesach. So a non-Jew has some chametz, your neighbor, and then invites you over, and you have that chametz. Okay, so the Rabbi Yehuda, within the view of Rabbi Yehuda. So Rava Amar Loka, Rava says you will get lashes for such a thing. If you had chametz after Pesach that belonged to a non-Jew, you get malchus. Why? Because Rabbi Yehuda is the one who holds that chametz is asur before Pesach, on Pesach, and after Pesach. And Rava was not Rav Acha bar Yaakov. Rava was the one who interpreted the Mishnah like Rav Shimon, and therefore he is not of the opinion that Rav Yehuda learns that we extend Bal Yira, the prohibition against owning, we extend it to eating. And therefore, he does not have that teaching. And therefore, according to Rabbi Yehuda, who says there's a prohibition of eating chametz on, during, and after, holds that prohibition is true for Jews and non-Jews. And therefore, if I have chametz of a non-Jew after Pesach, according to Rabbi Yehuda, you would get malchus. Rabbi Acha bar Yaakov Omar, Ein Aloka, he says you do not get malchus. Now the Gemara is going to spell out what I just spelled out. Rav Amar Loka, Rav says you get malchus, if Rabbi Yehuda started Achil and started Riyah. Because Rava holds that Rabbi Yehuda does not learn the prohibition of eating from the prohibition of seeing. Yes, by seeing it's limited to a Jew, but when it comes to eating, that's for a non-Jew as well. And therefore, if you have that chametz after Pesach, you get malchus. Rabbi Acha bar Yaakov Amar, Ein Aloka. Rabbi Yaakov said you do not get malchus. Why? Yalef Sa'or Da'achilim Isar Riyah. Because he holds that Yehuda says we do derive the prohibition of consumption from the prohibition of being seen, and therefore there is no prohibition against eating a non-Jew's chametz after Pesach. Okay, now the Gemara says Rav Acha bar Yaakov actually retracted his interpretation of Rabbi Yehuda. Okay, we'll see how in a moment. The Tanya. Okay, we're going to go on a little bit of a rabbit hole, but we're going to come back to this question. Tanya was taught in the Brisa. Okay, Me'ila. There's a prohibition called Me'ila, which means if something belongs to Hektish, belongs to the Beis HaMikdash, and you go ahead and benefit from it, then you are going to be liable to pay the Beis HaMikdash back, and the punishment is kares. Kares is the most significant punishment. It's a spiritual punishment, okay? So let's say this thing of tape belongs to the Beis HaMikdash. Let's say someone dedicated to the Beis HaMikdash. I go ahead, oh, great, you have some tape. I use it to tape something, and then I have to pay the Beis HaMikdash back, and heaven forbid, I would get this terrible punishment called kares. Let's say a person eats chametz, which belongs to Hektish on Pesach, okay? So the Mishnah says, you're in violation of Me'ila, okay? Okay, you'd have to pay, basically, you violated Me'ilah. Oh, one more thing I have to tell you, and that is to be in violation of Me'ilah, it has to be valued as something. If I go ahead, something belongs to the base of English, but has no value. Okay, let's say it's this piece of tape. This piece of tape, I believe, has no value, okay? I think. Therefore, I would say if I go ahead and use this, there's no violation because it's valueless, and therefore Me'ilah doesn't apply. Me'ilah only applies if it's something of substance, it's something of substantial, not something very valuable. It has to have some value, and therefore, that's the other thing you have to keep in mind. Okay, so the one says, if you eat chametz on Pesach, you're a moel. That means you're in violation. Now, let's think about this. Chametz on Pesach, can I benefit from my chametz on Pesach? Absolutely not. So we have to immediately ask, why would there be Me'ilah? Why would there be Me'ilah on Pesach? And so the way we have to, you understand the question? In other words, chametz is something you cannot have benefit from. So if the only way I'm going to be chayev for Me'ilah is if it's something which has benefit, and this is something which does not have any value, then I can't benefit from it. So how am I over Me'ilah? So the way that Rishonim understand this, where Rashi explains this, is that this brisa follows the view of Rav Shimon. Again, what does Rav Shimon hold? Rav Shimon holds that during Pesach there's a prohibition against eating chametz. After Pesach, there is no prohibition against eating chametz. Now, he did hold there's a rabbinic prohibition against you and I eating our chametz. You start a regular person eating their chametz that they had over Pesach, but that's only for a person's personal stuff. That meaning a person owns chametz, you can't benefit from it after Pesach. But a chametz that belonged to hektish, there's no such knas, and therefore chametz after Pesach, which was kodesh, meaning there is chametz, let's say I dedicated a piece of bread, a loaf of bread to the base of Mikdash, so it's chametz, and then it was around for Pesach, okay, and then after Pesach, I'd be allowed to benefit from it. So that's why they say you have Me'ilah, because granted right now it doesn't have any value, but after Pesach, it's something which will have value. We'll see a term for that soon. It will have value, and therefore there is Me'ilah. Okay? V'yesh omrim lo mal. And the second opinion, though, says there is no Me'ilah. There is no, you didn't. So even though it will have value, for some reason, we have to understand the reason in a second, but for some reason there will be no Me'ilah. Ask the Gemara, man yesh omrim. Who is this opinion? Who says that there is no Me'ilah? Rav Yochanan, we'll see 5 different opinions. Rav Yochanan, Rabbi Nechunim ben Akana here. Is Rabbi Nechunim ben Akana, okay, why? 29a3. The time is Tan and Brisa. Rabbi Nechunim ben Akana, haya osa, es Yom Kippur, Mishavas, l'tashlumin. Rabbi Nechunim ben Akana made Yom Kippur like Shabbos when it comes to payment. What does he mean by that? Masham, it's just like by Shabbos, Mischayim, Benafsho, Upatim, Benashlumin. If a person is liable to pay with his life, then he is exempt from monetary obligation. What that means is as follows. Let's say a person goes to their neighbor's backyard and they light their swing set on fire. Okay, I don't know, bizarre. Yeah, bottom line is, lighting a fire is something which you would get executed for. A person would get executed for, they get stoned, right? So therefore, you have a very significant punishment, but you also have to pay this person back. So there's a principle called kimle b'derab mineh, which means that whenever you have the higher punishment kind of cloaks over it. The lower punishment is subsumed in the higher punishment. And therefore, since you have to, there'd be a tashlum, the repayment for the swing set, and there is the death penalty, therefore, the halacha is, it's from the Torah, that you do not have to pay the money. But that is only, we only see it explicitly in the Torah when it comes to execution, a physical punishment. But what about kares, right? What about kares? Yom Kippur, the punishment for violating Yom Kippur is not stoning, but rather it's kares. Kares is a spiritual punishment. Or is it the same thing? Rav Yochanan kind of says, yes, it is. So just like Shabbos, you're exempt from payment in a situation where you're going to get stoning, a person is liable to pay with his life, meaning the person is liable for kares, upatim and you'd be exempt from the monetary obligation. So what does that have to do with us? Because what's our case time? It's called Me'ilah of chametz. What's the punishment for eating chametz on Pesach? Kares. So on the one hand, you stole from the temple, you stole from the base of Mikdash, and therefore there's payment. At the same time, and even though right now it doesn't have any value, it's going to have value soon, so therefore we treat it as if it has value. But at the same time, by eating the chametz, the person is getting kares. And Rav Yochanan kind of holds that if you're getting kares at the same time you have a monetary obligation kicking in, you're exempt from the monetary obligation. Okay, that's opinion number one. Rav Yosef Omer, Rav Yosef says another answer. What they're arguing about is the following, which is a machlokas in Mesechus Temura, about redeeming consecrated items in order to feed them to the dogs. What does that mean? What that means is as follows. Let's say you have a piece of meat, which is an avela. An avela is animal which is not slaughtered. So who's allowed to eat an avela? Not me, not you, dogs, okay? So the normally, let's say something belongs to Hagdish, okay? Let's go back to my tape over here. Person dedicates this to the base of Hagdish, okay? This thing is worth $4, I don't know, $2, $1, $2. Okay, so basically what I could do, let's say, oh my gosh, I really want this tape. What I could do is I could take $2 and I could say the value of this thing goes onto the money. I have to give a little bit extra, fine, and therefore then I'm paid this, I redeem this, okay? So far so good. But let's say this thing is something which cannot be used, cannot be benefited from for a regular person. So for example, let's say it's an avela, okay? It's an avela and the only thing that could benefit from it is a dog, right? So some opinions say, I can't do pidyon, I can't redeem if it's for a dog. It's based on some sukkim. Other one opinion says, you could. What that means, it has to be usable. So what they're arguing about over here in this Mishnah, according to Rav Yosef, is... So the Mishnah Brisa, Brisa, where the argument on this Brisa is whether or not you're able to redeem consecrated items in order to feed them to the dogs. Madam Ramal, the one who says that you did commit Me'ilah, Kesavar Podim Esakachim Lachil Maklavim. He holds that right now it has value. Right now, when I have this chametz, it has value. Even though I can't eat it, but a dog could eat it. A dog's allowed to eat chametz, and therefore it does have value. It does have value. And therefore, if I go ahead and I eat this chametz, I was in transgression of Me'ilah. Mad Amar Lomal, the one who says that there is no Me'ilah, Kesavar Ein Podim, holds that you're not allowed to redeem consecrated items in order to feed them to the dogs. Okay, Rav Acha bar Rava Tana La. We're now at 29b1. Lahashmaita Bishmeid Rabbi Yosef B'Halishna. He has a different version. Everyone agrees that you are not allowed to redeem consecrated items in order to feed them to the dogs. Okay, everyone would agree you're not allowed to do so, and therefore it really has no value right now at all. There will not be me'ilah because the only thing that can eat it is a dog. Okay, what are they arguing about? Whether something that can lead to a benefit is considered a benefit right now. What we're going within over here is the view of Rav Shimon. Rav Shimon holds that something which has value. Rav Shimon holds that after Pesach you're allowed to go ahead and sell this. This chametz has value because he holds it's only a regular person's chametz that was owned over Pesach. There he said that you are. There's a knas, you can't benefit from it, but chametz that belong to kachim, you would be allowed to benefit from it after Pesach, and therefore right now no one's allowed to eat this chametz because it's chametz. But after Pesach, it's going to have value. So what they're arguing about is, do we see that as having value now? In other words, everyone knows right now it has no value, but since it'll have value soon, do we treat it as if it has value? Something which can lead to a benefit of money is it treated as money now? The one who says that there is me'ilah holds that it holds that right now we treat it as if it's money since it will be worth something after Pesach. The one who says that he has not committed me'ilah is because he holds that something can lead to payment is not treated as though it's money now. Okay, fourth answer, and this is the one that we're actually leading up to. Rav Acha bar Yaakov Amar Dukuli Ama Davar Gam Lamaman K'mam Dami. Rav Acha bar Yaakov says that both opinions in this Mishnah, both the one who says there is me'ilah and is not me'ilah, agree that something that can lead to benefit is treated as though it's money now. Okay, so if that's the case, then they should both hold that. They should both hold that you are over me'ilah. The hacha beplug to Rabbi Yehuda, Rav Shimon Kamiflagi. What they're arguing about is between Rabbi Yehuda and Rav Shimon, meaning man damar lo mal ki Rabbi Yehuda. The one who said there is no me'ilah is like Rabbi Yehuda. Why? Because he holds the chametz is going to be forbidden after Pesach. He holds the chametz is going to be forbidden after Pesach because again, Rabbi Yehuda says that chametz is asur on Pesach, during Pesach, and after Pesach. But what are we talking about over here? We're talking about kachim. And we see Rav Acha bar Yaakov is saying that Rabbi Yehuda holds that even by kachim, after Pesach, there would be no prohibition. Okay, we'll come back to the second amount of Ramal, the one who says that there is me'ilah, Rav Shimon holds like Rav Shimon, and after Pesach, it will have value. Since after Pesach, it will have value, it has value now. Ask the Gemara of Rav Acha bar Yaakov, Huda Amar, wasn't it Rav Acha bar Yaakov who said, did Rav Yehuda yalif sa'or da'achil misor dera'iyah? Didn't Rabbi Acha bar Yaakov tell us in the view of Rabbi Yehuda that Rabbi Yehuda learned that just like when it comes to seeing chametz, it's limited to a Jew and not to chametz belonging to a non-Jew or to hektish, so too when it comes to eating, it's limited to a Jew and not a non-Jew and not hektish. And yet over here he's telling us that hektish will be usur, the kodesh stuff will be usur after Pesach. Ella Hadaber Rav Acha bar Yaakov. Clearly Rav Acha bar Yaakov retracted from his original interpretation. One last answer. Rav Ashi Amar Dikuli Ama Impotent. Everyone agrees that you are not allowed to redeem consecrated items in order to feed them to the dogs. Okay, and therefore it has no value now because that. And everyone agrees everyone agrees that something can lead to a benefit is not treated as something that has value now. So I can't give it to dogs. Okay, I can't redeem it to give it to the dogs. Okay, and the future value is meaningless. So why would one opinion say you are moel, that it's worth anything? What they're arguing about is within the viewpoint of Rabbi Yossi and the Rabbanan. Mandar Malik Rav Yossi, the one who says that there is me'ilah holds Rav Yossi. Remember what did Rav Yossi hold? He had this wild, radical idea that chametz on Pesach is only forbidden to eat, but you are allowed to benefit from it. If you're allowed to benefit from it, then if you eat it, you are over on me'ilah. And the one who says he is not committed me'ilah holds like the Rabbanan, who hold that it is forbidden to benefit, and therefore it has no value, and therefore there is no me'ilah. Okay, we are going to start in the middle of Chatas Mabez tomorrow. Have a great day.